It's time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's King of the Couch back in your ear holes for another week of the King of the Couch podcast. Episode 131. Fuck, we're rocketing along here. I've got a guest again this week. I'm super stoked about this guy. I feel like we've really connected on the social media platforms. It's I wouldn't say love just yet, but I'm not ruling it out also just yet.
It's one way love.
Thank you, mate. It feels like it's really taken off. I'm feeling fucking good about it. Matthew James Oxlade. How are you, man?
Good, man. Good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Matt and we literally met online. I did a bit of a stalk on him. He's a music photographer. He's a digital marketer. He's also the host of the Creative Detour podcast. That was how I actually come across you, to be honest. And I will tell a slight story about how I fell into your world. I came across your podcast and I was like, this is cool. And it was the one with Mikey from Violent Soho. And I was like, sweet, this is sick, And I found out you're from Brisbane. But I screenshotted your like overlay. And I was like, I was trying to explain to my partner what I wanted to do with this overlay thing. And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I was like, look, this guy. I was like, this is what I want. He's done it. I was like, I don't know what it's called, but this is the window thing, right? And anyway, unbeknownst to me, started following you, screenshotted it, and we got talking. You were like, hey, you do a podcast? I was like, yeah, I do. You listened to like 5 minutes and got back to me and gave me a huge compliment on the audio quality. And I was like, mate, that's sick. I was like, that's probably one of the nicest feedback I've ever got,
So there's so much trash out there, man. There's so much trash out there. And like audio is like the main thing of a podcast. And you're like, can you at least try to make it sound good for my ears?
I know. And then I shot straight back. I was like, thanks so much, man. I was like, I've got to be honest. I was like, I saw your video and I stole it and that's what I want. And then you fully helped me out. So anyone that follows the King of the Couch on YouTube, you'll notice that I added a video overlay last week. I'd like to take full credit and say I built that on my own, but it wasn't. It was Mr. Oxlade over here, AKA Matt Simplified on Instagram. Go and check him out because he's got awesome content. He's got a YouTube channel as well, which is sick. But we'll plug it tonight, man. But, mate, I'm really excited to have you on the show. I feel like, man. I don't know, as I said, I really feel like over the last week or two when we've been talking, like it's, I feel like I know you so well, and I really don't know you at all, obviously, but it's kind of funny how that works online, where you mentioned something about idols too. I think that was one of the initial things I was like, oh, dude, I love idols. And that was kind of like the connection there. But yeah, super stoked to have you on the
interesting, body. Right? Like, it's kind of like you do get to know certain people quicker, I think. Yeah. And it's kind of like, I don't know, like you are what you put out there and you only have the words that you have. And so because working in digital marketing, words are really important, both bad, like, really fraudulent, fake stuff, but there's also a really easy way to be authentic. And that's just speak the way that you think you sound. And so just talking to you is just like, oh, hey, man, I've got some spare time. I can help you out. Like, why wouldn't I? You know, like, and you've got similar passions, but also you like actually wanted feedback. And I think in a world where everyone's pretending to want, something authentic, but they don't actually want any real conversation. It's really like, refreshing to meet someone like you, where you just have that connection quicker because you're both really open-minded people.
Yeah, 100%. That was exactly what I thought about you. And you were the guy that, remember, I was saying about the music show and stuff, and it had a slightly different name, had this kind of vision for it. And in the back of my head, I was like, am I just kind of like, I've got this idea, but I'm kind of moving away from this already awesome idea. And you were the person, after I'd asked you a couple of questions, you shot back and were just like, how come you're doing this sort of thing? No one had really asked me that question. And as soon as you asked the question, I knew the answer immediately. I was like, yeah, you're right. And you was like, look, you've already done X, Y, and Z. You've got a good thing going. Why move away from what you're doing? And I was like, yeah. And it was at the exact time I needed to hear it. And that was the day before I did the podcast with Ken last week from the Bronx. And it was just like yeah, fuck it. I'm just going to carry on as King of the Couch. Like, I'm the podcast. It's me. And that was it. So yeah, from the few dealings that we've had back and forth, it's been very honest, to the point where I feel like I've known you for years, but it's kind of like it's a 5-minute relationship where we're just like being brutally honest that we've been together for 50 years, which is which is nice.
That's good friend. That's how good friendships get started, man.
Yeah, shit, yeah, man. No, it's good. I think we're in for a long one here, mate. Hey,
Yeah.
suffering from COVID. He's the first positive guest I've had on the show. I will say, we're not in the same room.
No, very
He's
different.
he's isolated in his very fucking nice studio.
Yeah, if you're
I love
watching
it.
the video, if you're watching
Oh,
the video one, this is nice, right?
it looks good.
Like, my friend Liam Edward Brennan, who's a filmmaker, and he was on one of the episodes, and we talked about how like that episode was really cool of the Creative Detour podcast, because I've known Liam for years, but we both suffer from imposter syndrome. He's making ads for McDonald's, man. One of the Hemsworth brothers. I always get the wrong one mixed up. That he's doing big stuff, and he still feels like people forget about him. And it's like, dude, how? Like, you're getting these big opportunities. He hooked me up with this light, which is half of why I look good. The rest of it is Philips Hue from your local Bunnings.
I love it, man. I was again straight up. I was like, I've got an all right background. It's going well. I've got one light. Then I see your screen fucking flick on. I was like, Jesus Christ. I was like, here we go. I was like, we're on with a professional tonight. No, it's
this
cool.
is nothing, man. Like, you see other people's stuff, and it's like, you watch the one with Liam and I, and he went over the top, right? But to him, it probably has a lot of room for improvement. And I think when we're creating things or we're being creative people, we forget that there's like, what we're doing. A lot of people go, that's really cool. That's the goal. And we look at it and go, wow, there's so much better I could do. And you just got to be comfortable in that growth, because I look at it and go, it's disgusting.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's one of those things too. And I was talking to someone about this recently about podcasting, like in a nutshell. I had a mate actually ask me. He's just started a podcast. He's like 11 episodes in. Shout out for him for. I mean, you got to put your balls on the line. Like it's a scary sort of thing to go. I'm going to get my thoughts and feelings out there in the interwebs, and someone can rip them apart or give me praise, but. Yeah, he came at me because he got a bit of bad feedback about like his latest episode being too boring. He's like, how do you get your topics and do this and do that? And I was like, man, oh, one, I love talking, and I said, just find things that you want to talk about and just talk about them like you would love to hear that story or be entertained by it. Like if you're telling me about your weekend, don't just be like, yeah, I had some beers with some friends and went to the beach and now I'm back at work. That's a fucking 2.5 second story. Like I can make that over 10 minutes and make it like a little short film, and then once you get the content mastered, then you can start to wander off. Like that was my whole thing. I was like, if I just nail the content and nail what I want to talk about and be consistent with that, then I'll worry about like upgrading the mics to better sound quality, upgrading the fucking cameras and all this sort of stuff. Cause it was just like, you can literally go and spend $5,000 tomorrow and go, yeah, I can do a little bit better, cause there's just so much out there. But that was my thing. So, but mate, yeah, look, COVID aside, I'm glad that you're on the show. Are you still positive?
I guess so, until Wednesday. Like they said, I have 7 days, but it's right now. It's just this little tickle in my throat. Some little one little COVID guy's in there, like with a little feather, and he's just like tickling me a little bit.
He's annoying. But and
yeah, so I'll try keep him down.
You're not too bad, mate. Well, I'd like to say I'd edit it out, but frankly, I don't know how to, so we won't do that. And I think it adds some, I think it adds some depth, this coughing, frankly. This is real. This is raw right here. Hey, before we sort of jump into going on about all the stuff that you do, because there's quite a bit I'd like to talk about tonight. I always ask a couple of like icebreakery questions. I just like to know the answers, frankly. Mate, have you got a death row meal?
Building a little profile.
Yeah.
Well, I had this conversation recently about my death row meal, and I picked a pepperoni pizza, and then someone was like, oh, is that it? I'm like, well, a good one.
Yeah,
and
not a shitty
then
one.
they were like, oh, I'm like, well, what do you want? And they're like, well, I want that plus ice cream plus, and I'm like, whoa, no. I thought it was just like a one-time thing. So yeah, I reckon I would just lowball and go just a pretty good pepperoni pizza would be nice.
Yeah, I think that's nice. A good pepperoni is nice. I like the way there's these people that really thought about it. They're obviously scared for the electric chair. They're like, oh, I'm going to have like a 17-course degustation. It's like, mate, you're dying at 11 p.m. All right, if I can get the food in, you know what I mean? There's no rhetorical question. But God forbid any of us go to death row. Any of the guests from the past do not go to death row.
I'll call you with my last call to let you know.
Have you got a favorite alcoholic and or non-alcoholic drink? What's your go-to poison?
My favorite alcoholic drink I never order it, but it's like anything with blue curacao or Midori. I'm like a very tropical man.
That is tropical.
So I would anything like you just make me something with that, I'd just be happy. And then my favorite non-alcoholic is lemon lime bitters, which again is a
Yeah,
little bit
nice.
on the tropical side, and I hate the beach, so it makes no sense, but they're delicious beverages.
You don't need to go to the beach though when you drink like that. That's you're fruity enough to stay in a dark little dive bar drinking your cocktails. So we don't
I
need the
paid
beach.
$9. I paid $9 for lemon lime bitters the other day because I was trying to save money down in Melbourne, and then the beers were $5. So I'm like, I guess I'm getting fucked up tonight, boys.
Yeah, that's fucked how they do that. Like, I don't think there's certain things that you shouldn't have to pay over a certain amount. Like in society, there should be a cap. And lemon lime bitters
Yeah,
at $9. Sorry, that's a punchable offense. Hey, to the bar.
I'm with it. It's a death
Seriously,
row offense. It's a death row offense.
Yeah, dude. What's your meal, dude? Because you're going to fucking the chair for that shit. Oh man. Hey, have you got a favorite movie?
Favorite movie is probably Funny People, which is again probably the first of many hot takes you'll probably get because a lot of people hate that movie. But I reckon it's amazing because it has both humor and sadness. And in between is this amazing narrative that no one actually gives a shit about you. So you can be anyone that you want to be. And that's a
I
really nice line to pull.
you've I'll be honest, I side with the fence that thought it was a shit movie.
A
But
lot of people do, man.
that review has made me want to go back and watch it. I'll tell you where it goes wrong. The movie's called Funny People. It has funny people into it, and I didn't think it was funny. I wanted my $10 back. But
Yeah,
I
it's a
appreciate that
gut
because that was a
punch.
good take. I've never heard anyone talk about it like that. So yeah. But that's
Yes.
perspective. I like that.
There's happiness and sadness with like creative journeys.
Yeah.
I'm all
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, man. I like that. And this is probably the hardest one, I think, frankly. Have you got a favorite band or an
Uh,
artist?
my favorite artist would probably be Connor Oberst or anything Connor Oberst touches. So whether it's Bright Eyes, whether it's his punk band, whether it's the stuff he did with Phoebe's all right as well, I
Mm,
guess. Like for him, I don't think it's anywhere near his best, but
mm.
um, yeah, I'd say probably him, but everything else kind of rotates
Yeah.
because like today what was I like the other day I was listening to Slipknot, like Connor Oberst obviously is singer songwriter, kind of like folky Americana-y.
Mm,
um I think Kendrick's To Pimp a Butterfly is one of the best albums of all time, so you've got like rap. I think
yeah.
Kanye is like really inspiring from the innovation side of things. Like it's all over the shop, but I would say anything Connor Oberst touches is always gold.
Yeah, nice. I've heard the name and I know Bright Eyes, but I don't you know them but you don't know them at all. And that like
Yeah.
I love this because it's like, all right, now I'm gonna have to go and fucking watch Funny People and listen to Conor Oberst music
Do you
tomorrow.
like
So
Bob Dylan?
I do. I wouldn't say like a massive Bob Dylan fan. One genre for me like is folk. That's one of those ones that's very hit and miss. Like I'm like some I hate, and others I'm like that's not too bad. So I can be a bit touchy on that genre. Is that what you'd call? Is he sort of folky Americana kind of?
Yeah, I guess so. Like he changes a lot,
Mm,
and like he's had such a long career. Like he started when he was 13. Now I think he's pushing 50. But
yeah.
there was this album called Ruminations, which is my least favorite album of his sonically.
Mm,
But if you like listen to it, it was like it's just a demo album effectively because he was accused of rape in the Me Too movement kind of thing. Then the lady came out
oh
and goes,
wow.
"Oh, I just lied. Sorry, I lied." And then all the stress from that gave him a brain aneurysm. And so he thought he was going to die. So he wrote this kind of like, I'm dying, I'm on my way out. No one gives a shit about me because of this false accusation record. It's a really like dark album.
Sounds
And
dark.
like, it's very Bob Dylan-y. But then he's
Mm,
got like other ones that are like protest songs against Bush when Bush was in. Like, he's got his punk stuff with Desapreciados or however the hell you pronounce that. They got a
mm.
reissue the other day. So much good stuff, man. Like, just get on This Is Connor Oberst or whatever on Spotify
Yeah.
and it'll be good.
I'll check him
Yep.
out. He sounds prolific. I find that really. There's a few artists I listen to like that. That's like, if someone's like, "Hey, recommend me an album," you're like, "Okay, like, where do I start? How long have you got?" Because a
Don't
lot
you
of
find
those,
the one is like, the one that you want to recommend is not the best starting one?
no, and that's it. It's like, and it's Idols, I use Idols as a good example. They were a band that, like, when I immediately saw them, I was like, oh, I want to like this band before I'd heard them. And then when I first heard them, I was like, I didn't get it. You know what I mean? It was the first couple of songs. I think Colossus might have been the first one I heard, and I was like, God, this is because I'm into like heavy metal, punk, rock, like faster stuff. And I was like, God, this is a bit slow, you know? And it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. Then I went and found some faster ones, and then I went back to that sort of shit, and I'm like, now I get it. You know, like it all came together. And I think it's like that with a lot of artists where you're like, here, you got to listen to that one. But if it's like you're walking in off the street, people are just like, what the fuck? Like that, what is this? You know, like
Yeah.
you didn't prime me at all. There's no foreplay. You've just gone straight to orgasm. I'm
Yeah,
not
you
even
just
there.
you ripped my dick off.
Yeah, dude. I'm not there. This is so dry.
But when you work for it, it's so rewarding.
Yeah,
Like,
it
you know,
is.
because you feel like you've discovered something that's cost you something.
Ugh.
And that's something with streaming, there's no barrier to entry anymore. You could just like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, like, oh, like this. Whereas if you like sit through a whole album and you've really slogged it out and then it clicks right at the end,
Yeah.
that's your death row meal.
Oh yeah, dude. I love that. I love that. I've recently just got into NoFX. Like how they've been around since 1983, and I'm just like, yeah, I just feel like listening to NoFX, and I don't know what it was that made me listen to them. I think I watched Punk and Drublic, this YouTube documentary on them that had like Bad Religion and all these other bands, and man, I was just, and again, I just fell in love with the band and Fat Mike, and they're all like, I mean, he's like into philosophy and all that sort of stuff and political science. But you know, when you can really judge a book by its cover, like to look at him, you know, he cross dresses, he's got the crazy hair, he's obviously, you know, a bit overweight, tattoos all over, like so a lot of people in society go, oh, that guy hasn't got it together. But you're like, no, this guy really does have it together. Like he's just doesn't, he's not part of, you know, your normal 9 to 5 society. But the more and more I listen to their music, I'm like, God, this is just fucking everything I need to hear right at this point in time. Like it all makes sense to me right now. And I'm like, I'm loving it. So yeah, when you find something that just clicks, like maybe you're like
Enjoy
this,
it, eh?
you're sucked. You're just like, I'm in, you know, but
Dude, it's the best. And no one else will get it because it's this raw emotion that
yeah.
like, you know, cannot be described. And even if someone else has a similar one, it's not the same. And so you own that. And that's the best part about music.
Yeah, I agree, man. I appreciate it. I love it. Sounds like we're on the same page there. Hey, mate, you do a fair bit. I didn't really know where to start, which section to break down first. Obviously you helped me with the overlay stuff, so I knew that you had some skills in the audio, video, marketing world. That was the straight off. But you're a music photographer, which really really sort of got me when I had a look through your Instagram, and there was quite a few people that I was like, fuck, they're cool. Obviously Clowns, Violent Soho, June Rats, Skeggs, I saw all those, all the classic like Australian bands of right now. They're really killing it, a lot of these bands, which is really good to see. There's a good shot you had in there of Frank Carter from Rattlesnake, Gallows fame. I love Frank Carter. And I was like, wow.
Oh, of course, because you like the heavier stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, like Gallows for me was just like unreal. But then also I love Pure Love. The first Frank Carter album was just like that. The first Rattlesnakes album was just, man, hard to touch. Like that is so angry, and I love it. But as I was going through, I was like, fuck, I was like, you really are like a proper music photographer. You're not just one of these guys that says they're a music photographer. How did you get stuck into that? And then how, I guess, have you been successful with it and getting in front of these people and doing what you do?
I guess how I got started with it is I felt like, you know, I wanted to give something back to music. And to me, being a fan is important, but I just felt like there's something I can do. I don't know what it is. And I always really liked photography. So I'm like, we'll just give it a go. And I sucked at it. And I still look at it. And like we were saying before, I still look at it and go, oh, well, I still suck now. But, you know, you got to put that aside and let other people judge it. But, you know, I just really wanted to do something. And I think capturing the journey of artists that otherwise can't do it themselves because they can't be in two places at once. That's the first appeal. The second appeal is getting better at photography with a time constraint. You know, I can spend all day in the garden taking a photo of a flower. Flower's not going anywhere. But with music photography, you get 3 songs. Generally, you get 3 songs, right? If you don't get it in those first 3 songs, you can't just go, hey, can I get another one? Or, hey, can you go back on stage and do it again? And just do this. I missed it slightly.
Another
like,
encore.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all you get. And so that element of pressure really makes you learn from your mistakes.
Mm.
And I think the third thing is I'm really passionate about working hard. And with gig photography, you know, they want the photos ASAP. So, you know, you generally get to the venue at like 7 whenever the doors open. If you're doing a traditional, not a behind the scenes thing, and you're there till like 11,
Mm.
then at 11, you go home. Then you've got to edit. You're probably like starting to edit at 11:45. You'll probably edit till like 1, maybe 2. Then you go to sleep. Then you're up at 6 for your day job. And then you're at work. So, you know, that amount of self-discipline to keep that, you know, train moving and not just go, I'm kind of tired. You know, that there's some self-discipline to be taught there. And when I stopped doing uni and full-time work, I was just like bored. I was like, I'm used to taking on more than this. And that
Yeah.
kind of fire helped. So they were kind of like the 3 reasons I got into it. But the first being like, you look back at these bodies of work that you make, and there's no one that can take that away. If the band just ceases to exist tomorrow, you've created this amazing memory for someone that otherwise wouldn't exist. And that's the most important thing for me.
Yeah, wow. I like that. And I thought that, I mean, like photos in general, when you get a good photo, like I love the fact that it's stuck there in history. Like you can't, unless you burn it or whatever, like it's there for people to see. But it is such an important part of everything, you know, like I love, I love the fact that we live in a day and age now where you can get so much information and so much vision on a band and things that you love, you know, but it's such an important part. Like I think that, you know, it's such a dire thing in the whole industry, you know, especially the live gig stuff. Like that just captures that raw emotion. Like for me, when I see that sort of stuff, and I was looking through your photos today, and I've been to a gig in like, yeah, like 2 to 3 years, you know, I was just like, fuck, I can't, I've got 3 gigs lined up so far this year. And I'm like, God, I can't wait to get back, you know, because I was getting that feeling through your photos of just like, this is raw and this is cool. So it was
Well,
good,
that's what you
man.
want. You want this raw sort of feeling, right? That like
Yeah.
you remember it being there. And maybe it's not perfectly in focus. Maybe it doesn't have all the right things that a
Mm,
university would teach you because I'm self-taught. You know, that's not the right way to go, but it's also not a wrong way to go. But if you capture the essence of something, like there's really no better photo than
yeah.
that, other than another one that does the same thing. And I guess to answer your question before that I sort of missed is how did I stick around with it, or how did I make a living? It's always a secondary income, but
Yeah.
I have been fortunate enough to make more money than the average, you know, music photographer
Mm,
because, you know, I'm monetized subscriber bases. Like, you know,
awesome.
I go, okay, if the band's not going to pay because they don't get paid anything, or if they do, the manager keeps those purse strings real tight and
Mm,
someone else will do it for free. How do I do it? How do I keep doing what I want to do? And the answer was to treat the people that follow me as potential customers. Who
yeah.
do they like? You know, I don't think it's any coincidence that you find my account and you go, hey, I like all these bands that you photograph.
Yeah.
I don't just work with those bands, you know, I work with them because I like them, yes,
Yeah.
but also there is a common strand. If
Mm,
I then go and photograph a rapper, there's no way that print will sell.
yeah.
And so is it worth me doing it? Maybe if I really like it, but you know, I'm not
Mm,
going to go out of my way to do it.
yeah.
And so I treated that like a little shop, and I built my subscriber base up to the point where I go, okay, band, if you want me to come on the next tour, I'll fully fund this tour myself, but you have to sign, say, 10 prints, and I keep 100% of the profit that way. But then I'll reinvest that into the next tour that you don't have to pay for. And I'll pocket any of the excess. So then it's
Okay.
up to me to manage everything myself,
Yeah. All
but I
right.
don't have to worry about, you know, being booked next time because it's already booked. So you
Yeah.
just got to put
Right.
your money where your mouth is one time, and then
Yeah.
it just keeps rolling. And that's how I stuck around doing it. And a lot of photographers at the time, and there's still couples still around today, that hated that model,
Mm,
but they weren't getting paid. They all go to their jobs at JB Hi-Fi, and that's great. But don't act like I'm the one cannibalizing it and meaning that everyone gets paid $0, because I mean, you could have done the same thing, but there
mm,
never was money on the table that I wiped off. There never
yeah.
was money there. I created it elsewhere. and they want to sell prints and all those kind of things, and that's great. And then I didn't do anything different, but they sure came for me when like the model was slightly different, because that's branding, that's marketing. You're part of the machine, you're evil. And it's like, no, you just got to do what you got to do, you know?
Yeah, it's funny, hey, like, and I appreciate you sharing that, because besides photography and loving the images, I have no idea about anything like, because how anyone would monetize it, but besides just selling a print, maybe, you know, after the fact. But yeah, there's a massive taboo sort of thing on it, isn't there? Where like, it's like even with the podcast and stuff like that. Anything you do creatively, and I always go, it goes all the way up to like music and movies and downloading and streaming, etc. Like, but anything that's got like a creative flair to it, it's almost like this, like, yeah, you got to do it for free. And it's like, do you know how much time and effort and money goes into this free thing that you want from me? Like, I never really got the gap of like where people go from, hey, thanks for all your time and your effort and this and that, and I'm fucking off and keeping all the money. It's like, huh? Like, it's a weird thing in this country. I don't know, maybe it's a universal thing, but I feel like the creative industry gets shit on the most at this point in time with that whole way of thinking, which is ridiculous in my mind.
Yeah. And I think it's like they act like, you know, oh, this is fun. There's a fun element to it, so you should be grateful for the opportunity. And it's like, you know, I am grateful for the opportunity, but you also want it, right? Like, otherwise you wouldn't ask me to come here. But having that conversation then opens yourself up to being kind of like blacklisted with that one manager. And, you know, a lot of, because I've worked around a stable of artists rather than just whoever the hell is coming through. You know, now those artists will pay, and it'd be more of a traditional sort of thing. But I'd kind of like they're my friends, and it introduces another difficulty where it's like, I don't really want to accept payment from you because I've got a day job, and it's hard for me to take $1 from you when it's not an equal dollar. In an interesting sort of way. It's a hard one to sort of rationalize, but I'm still working on that, you know. But I appreciate that they try to give me money, and sometimes they just dump stuff in the account, which is nice. But it's a scary situation to be in, man. Like, it never gets easier, it just gets more complex.
I agree. Like, even just little things, if I've ever sold merch and stuff, and like a family member or a friend starts to buy stuff, and you're like, even though you're doing something nice for them by making merch or making a podcast they listen to, as soon as they spend like $1, you're like, oh my God, I owe them something. I'll chuck something in for free. Or you're like, well, but that's just I think that's a psychological thing. How did you, I guess the point where you were like, you wanted to do the photography and stuff like that. Like, what was the first road into getting in front of a band? Like, is it, you buy a ticket to the gig, or you got to get some media pass, or how does it work? Because I've been to gigs and they're usually down the front in the best fucking spot, you know, between the barrier and and right where you want to be. I always think when I'm in the, just as a digress, whenever I'm at a gig, I used to always want to be a rock star growing up, right? And one of the biggest drivers from that was like, I want to see bands, but I want to be fucking crammed in the mosh pit forever. I want to be like stretching on the side stage going, yeah, I'm with the band, dude. I don't have a fucking broken back, you know, for my trouble. But yeah, how did you get from like, I'm picking up the camera and now I'm like in front of Clowns or Violent Soho or Frank Carter, for God's sakes? Like, how did that come about?
Well, you probably remember Crowbar in Brisbane, right? Like, when that was around. Rest in peace, Crowbar Brisbane. You know, leading up to that, I just would buy tickets, and I just said, hey, if I buy a ticket, can I bring my camera? Because there's different policies for every kind of venue. But I figure if the venue was small enough, the bands will be small enough, which means that they won't have as stringent requirements around cameras. So I'll just build up a huge body of work that way, and then I'll apply to shoot Foo Fighters and whatever these big stars that I wanted to do through a more traditional sort of route, which is the magazine blogs. But in doing that, I met the owner of Crowbar, Trad and Tyler, and Trad was like, hey, come in, I want to do an art show. And we just sort of sat down, and he was like, I just want more art on the walls. And I'm like, well, I want to shoot more. And he goes, oh, well, why don't I just give you a permanent AAA? You can do whatever you want, which means I can go wherever I want, to any gig that I want. And just give me the photos, kind of thing. And then it evolved into, oh, well, now we're making more money, so now we'll put a bar tab on for you. And now we're making more money, so we'll put a bar tab plus pay you. And and things like that. But really the value of that, of being a house photographer, was kind of like, you're kind of like an island, and all the water, which is the bands and all the transientness of touring, all happens around you. And the same touch point is you. So you don't have to go anywhere. You just have to stay at the same place, learn the same lighting, connect with everyone. And that's how I created the Crowbar Couch series, which is all the bands on the couch at the back. I'm like, what if I buy some lights? And I said, I'll buy some lights and we'll just do same band, like different band on the same couch every single time. There's like probably 15 minutes of networking that you get in something like that, but there's a purpose. And so the amount of people that you met that way, I think I met clowns through that way. I met Soho at Crowbar. I met June Rats through Soho. Like I met Skeggs through June Rats. Like everything connects. I met Camp Cope at Crowbar. You know, like you got to be the guy that is there. Like Trad said to me, just be part of the wallpaper. You do just have to be part of the wallpaper. You don't even need to actually be very good. You can just be consistent and be the one person there when no one else is there. And so that's the advice I always give to every starting photographer, is shoot the smallest bands you can, because they will be the biggest bands in like a year. And who are they going to bring? The person from the start.
Yeah. Fuck yeah, dude. That's cool. There was a couple things in there that, stuck out. The couch series, I didn't realize that was you. I remember seeing all the images of that too, you know, and I should have put two and two together when I was having a look through your thing today, but I was like, fuck, I've seen these before, you know. And Crowbar was like, shout out Crowbar, because, you know, not that I was probably there as much as you were, but it was always just, man, it was the coolest place that Brisbane had to offer, frankly. Like in my mind, saw quite a few bands there, and it was just a good vibe. It's a shame that they had to shut down, but it's good that they're kicking on in Sydney, and hopefully the worst was behind them. I know that they've lifted the stupid singing and dancing policy, as long as you know, not religious, whatever the fucking technicality was. Well,
I've been down there a couple of times, right? Like I went down there when they first launched it, as like to take some photos of the venue, and been down there since. And the reason why Crowbar is so successful is because of Trad and Tyler, because Trad used to be an Amity Affliction. You know, Tyler knows the industry inside and out. They get it at a more sort of organic cultural level than just running a business, but they also are sick at running a business. And those two together is why Crowbar is successful. Because if a band goes, oh, hey, we've run out of beer, they won't say that. But Crowbar will notice they've run out of beer, and they'll say, what do you want? And then they'll bring that plus some Jack Daniels. And bands, that's like the currency for bands, right? Like you treat a band well and they'll come back. And that's why you see bands with Crowbar shirts, like, you know, internationally and stuff, because they remember their time there, because they were given a shirt and they're like, oh man, that was the sickest time. And that's what Brisbane is kind of missing right now since Crowbar moved out. There's no central point. There's a few sort of places that are starting to sort of develop that, but it's just nothing is ever like Crowbar, and I miss it.
100%. I agree, man. It was just something about that place that was just, it was authentic, like 100% authentic. Like you said, you obviously know the guys a lot better than I do, but band, you know, musician people that have gone to just create an environment for band musician type people to hang out and play, and they've just fucking done it so well. So it was a huge.
And you probably don't remember, but when my camera got stolen from Crowbar, it's like the first time the police has ever needed to be involved in anything with Crowbar. And Trad goes, we'll get it back. And I'm like, we won't. We won't. It was after a clown's gig. And I was like, we won't get it back. And he was like, we will. It went so viral, man. Speaking of NoFX, is it Eric from NoFX?
Eric Melvin, the guitarist.
Yeah. He shared it, was like, because the guy was wearing a NoFX shirt. He was like, you're no fan of ours, blah, blah, blah. Fuck. Like, you know, and this thing just went viral, man. They ended up finding him and getting the camera back 10 days later.
I think I do remember this, man. This is going back a few years, eh?
Yeah.
I think I do remember this because I've
2016 or something.
Fuck, that's wild, man. Yeah, I do remember that. And that was the thing I think about the Crowbar community. It was so cool because when they were having some financial difficulties there during the pandemic, they did huge fundraisers and all that stuff. And like there was so many people like just chipping in, and like I was like, wow, they've really got a fucking whole family kind of environment, which was really cool. So yeah, good to see that they're kicking on in Sydney and they can hopefully get back to normal now. But yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, you're a Brisbane boy. I'm just up the road at the sunny coast, so I'd love to go back and have a venue like that again. I feel like now that it's gone, I'm like, oh God, I wish I went there like more.
Yeah, you always realize what you miss when it's gone, right?
I know. That's what I said to Ken last week. I was like, man, now that I never thought concerts would be taken away, and then they were taken away, I was like, oh fuck. The first concert, I'm like, buy a ticket, buy a ticket, buy a ticket.
Yeah.
So yeah, but no, that's cool, man. So you must be getting back to normal now that live shows are on the go again. You've been out doing much, or you sort of playing it cool for a bit, or what's the go?
Yes and no. Like there's lots of gigs around, but they're still getting cancelled all over the place or moving a lot. Number one. And number two, a lot of those bands in that list of mine, they're all either writing or they had a release in the height of it. Like so released Everything's A-OK, and then everything still was A-OK, but everything kind of fell apart a lot. And so now it's kind of like, well, what do they do now? Like, and I don't know what the answer to that is, but there's always a few shows popping up here and there, but Clowns have like a big year sort of plan. So hopefully Europe pulls off and then I can go to Europe. And then there's some stuff later this year as well. So that's good. Otherwise, June Rat's got their new album, so there'll probably be some touring there. Skegs kind of are in this like weird sort of limbo, right? Like with Skegs where they had an album again during the pandemic. It's like, do you tour that? Or do you release a couple of singles? And that kind of seems to kind of be what they're doing. But photographers don't have that much foresight into what goes on anyway. You kind of get like a week's notice. And I was talking to you about this about Idols, right? Like, am I going to be at Idols? I don't know. Maybe not. Like, everything happens at the last minute.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, for our blossoming friendship, love to have you there side by side. But there's a good chance that you could be fucking over the other side of the barrier with that.
Or for 3 songs, and then I'll be back with you.
So that's it. You only get 3 songs out of a gig. Is that the rule of thumb? Is it?
Unless you've got a unless you got a AAA pass, yeah, that's all you get.
Yeah, nice. Okay.
And sometimes you get escorted out. Like sometimes like 3 songs, and then you're leaving the whole venue.
Wow. So they're like, right, you're done, photographer.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's like, and if you have a AAA, like, I don't know, I don't like standing at the side of like, I know to you, it seems good.
Yeah.
If you're there for a little bit, you get over it, man. It doesn't feel the same. It like, you want to be out the front. You want to feel it pointed at you. And plus it kind of feels a little bit weird. Like I don't get when people go, oh, I want to be side of stage, and then they're side of stage, and then they spend the whole time kind of looking at everyone else. Like, do you see me? I'm over here side of stage. It's like, dude, just enjoy it. Like, no one cares.
Yeah, that's it. It's like, unless I'm actually with the band, you're like, I'm not, it's like a Wayne's World, I'm not worthy kind of situation. You're like, what the fuck am I doing here? I should be out there with them.
It's awkward out there, man. Like no one's engaging with you. You're looking at like a side profile, and it's kind of like, it's not the same.
Are they hearing what I'm hearing right now? Yeah, fuck that. Well, man, in that case, I hope you're in the crowd then. I mean, if you only get 3 songs, fuck it. Hang the camera up for the night. Let's have a good one. But
yeah, it's a little locker.
Yeah, wow, that's cool. It's like that. So you've got your crew of bands that you go around with. Do you ever look out for new bands, or you're pretty set with what you like doing? You sound like you've got your model, your brand, whatever they want to say about it. You sound like you've got it down pat, which is cool.
Well, it's not about money to me. Like, so it's like, I don't really care if I take on more, if I take on less, I don't really care. I just want to have a good time doing it. I guess the most recent band that I sort of started that more like a similar working relationship with is Sly Withers, for example.
Oh yeah.
Just, like the album, felt like I understood the music. And so, we go, hey, I'll come shoot a show. Let's see how like we get along. We get along really well, did some more stuff together, and now we're talking about doing some more stuff. So, but if I don't want to leave the house, it's probably a good sign that maybe that band just isn't like creatively we're not a match. And there's been other bands like, for example, Luca Brasi. Love the Luca Brasi guys, right? And I've shot a fair bit for him, but I don't do a lot with them because I don't feel like I take their best photos. I feel like I take an okay photo, but the two photos are not the same. Like you want a photographer that understands the little movements, the changes in the music, the tempo change, or what generally happens at certain times. Like, there's certain points at a clown set where Stevie will do a certain thing, or you can look at someone and they know that you're there, and they're going to react in three different ways.
Yeah.
And so you can sort of hedge your bets because you know them.
Yeah.
Whereas if I just like the Luca Brasi guys, love them, but I don't understand it. Like I love the music, I love them, but creatively, I feel like they're better off getting someone else that gets these amazing shots, because mine are just okay with them.
Yeah, yeah, and that's cool being like super self-aware. I think like that, where you're going, look, I know I can do a great job here, and I'm not doing the best job. Like you better off going somewhere else. And that's no dig on your work, but it's good to know that. I think you can't fucking master absolutely everything. So you find it what you like, and I guess it is super important. I think money aside, it's good to make money off things, but it is cool to hear you go, look, I love what I'm doing. I love this band. And then you can add another layer or another element to help push that band or show your appreciation in that way. If you get money for it, then even better, right? So, yeah, I think it must be super cool to do what you do. It must be super fun as well, like just be able to get to listen to these bands and then become friends with them. I mean, as a musician, a fan, I'm like, oh God, that's super fucking, that's cool.
The best part about it is when someone does something, like if Henry from Soho, for example, sort of looks at you and like, gives you that, like, I'm gonna fucking do it.
Yeah.
And you don't know what he's gonna do. Then he does it, he jumps off like a speaker, or does something, or moons you or something. The look that they give you after that, that's like this laughing, like, it doesn't matter if you got it, that was fucking sick. Like that was a
Yeah.
moment that just like you and someone else sort of shared.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
the little things that a lot of people probably wouldn't see, but make your job really fun, because like,
Yeah.
it's not about whether I nailed it or not. There's all this pressure's gone. It's just, let's have a fucking cool time doing what we're doing and just trust we're all doing what we need to do. And that's
Yeah.
cool, feeling part of the team for those couple of seconds.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome, man. Again, yeah, I've never thought about it like that, but it would be like I say to my partner all the time, like, man, it'd be fun to just have a photographer like follow you around for a little while, because we're trying to take photos of each other and our daughter and stuff. Like, would be cool to just have a photographer. And then like, egotistical or not, like you'd play up to the camera. So when you're up there going, fuck, I'm gonna give it my all here. People pay money to come see me play. And then you got the camera there or the videographer or whatever it is going, hey, I could capture this fucking in time. Like, that's a really cool thing to be a part of. So yeah, that's sick, man. I appreciate you sharing that, because again, I have no idea about any of this sort of stuff. So it's super cool to hear this sort of shit, which is awesome.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's just nice feeling like you shape the smallest thing. Like, for example, on the album that Clowns are writing now, Steve and I have been joking about this certain type of song, and now the song's coming together, and it's coming together around the conversations that we've had. And that's like the smallest influence I have on something that other people are gonna listen to.
Yeah, fuck,
Is
that's sick.
like, man, that's like a really nice feeling when it means so much. You've got like, 99% coming in feeling great on you, but there's 1% where it's like, man, that's a really nice thing that there's something, a small piece of my DNA in here, or a small piece of my DNA in somebody's life reflection when they go, shit, I did some sick stuff. Even if they forget whoever the hell took the photo, that's a really nice thing to go, I created that for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. That would be cool, because you said you're now part of history there in your own right, outside of what you were
It's
there.
world's smallest piece of history, but I'll take it, man.
Yeah,
It feels
dude,
good,
take it, run with it. That's sick, man. No, cool, man. That's very cool. Anyone that hasn't seen your work, I'm sure they've seen your work, but Matt Simplified on Instagram, check it out there. But we'll plug your website at the end of it so they can go and check out absolutely everything. I wanted to talk as well. Obviously, there's elements of your digital marketing that you do, but I wanted to sort of talk about your podcast, because that was how I sort of found you very early on. Well, it sounds like you might have targeted me through a little Instagram algorithm or something like that, being a professional digital marketer. But yeah, your podcast, the Detour podcast. What's that about? How'd that come about? I know you've got musicians on there, other creatives. What's the
Yeah,
concept behind that, man?
basically it started because when I started doing anything creative, I felt like it was a really bad um it's just really bad tall poppy syndrome everywhere.
Mm.
And everyone wanted to live in this fantasy land about, hey, I'm getting paid this to do this, and everything's so easy for me. And oh, it's not easy for you. Oh, you must suck. Like, but they don't say that, but they kind of suggest that, oh, well, how come it's working for me? It's not working for you, dude. You're either collecting disability and you're not telling people about it, which is what people do. You either have a day job and you don't want to tell people about it. There's heaps of different things, right? You collect the
Yeah.
doll, but you're not getting paid what you say you're getting paid. And
Mm.
it puts off emerging people coming through. And I'm like, if I know that to be true in photography, I thought it just was photography. Then I started talking to band friends, and they're like, no, it's the same as like with bands, or it's the same with this, or it's the same with painting, or it's the same with this. It's like these little cancerous groups exist everywhere. And I thought it was just photography.
Yeah.
And then I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we only highlighted the trials and tribulations of established people or people that have made something cool, and actually talk about how fucking hard it is? Because it's
Yeah.
hard.
100%,
It's so
man.
hard.
Yeah.
As like people think you just like, oh, throw in your headphones, jump on a Zoom, it's done. It's
Yeah.
not, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
And so,
dude.
the podcast was started because I'm like, it'd be cool to have an honest conversation. Like the first episode where I talked to Jake about how like he was homeless on a tour because they didn't have anywhere to stay. So they just slept in the street.
Mm.
Everyone goes like, oh, clowns must be in hotels, right? It's like, maybe sometimes, maybe not, but there's been times where they had to rough it. You don't just go to Europe and you go, yeah, we're rich because we're international now. And so it's nice that people see through the veil a little bit and see that this is what it takes, or to humanize them a little bit, or to make them understand that it's okay if everything doesn't go to plan, because you can push through. And I know you said you listened to the Mikey one. Musicians obviously are a big part of it because that's who I've networked with a lot, but I'm trying to get a lot of different people in there. So we had Liam, who was a filmmaker. We had April, who was a photographer, and she talked about dealing with mental health when you're sort of dealing in a freelance sort of industry and you don't really know where your next sort of check's coming from, and how do you sort of manage your mental health when something doesn't go your way. I don't want to hear about the things that are going people's way, because they'll tell people about that. So that's not as interesting, So it's like kind of like, how did you get to where you're at? Tell me the warts and all story. And I think that's a more interesting story to tell. And I think people want to stop talking about a press release, like they don't want to go, oh, well, in the interview, I'm meant to do blah, blah, blah. I think they want to talk about something different. And that's the one they remembered. And I remember watching Hot Ones with, I forget the host's name in Hot Ones, Sean Evans.
Sean, yeah. I think the ball guy. Yeah.
Great interviewer, right?
Yeah,
because
he's really
he
good.
asks different stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
great.
You just have to ask it.
Yeah.
It's just that, like it's, fuck the release.
Yeah.
Who cares? Let's talk about how hard it is.
Yeah, exactly. Hot Ones are so good. I think it's just the fact that they're eating fucking hot sauce and chicken wings. It must just disarm the guest to answer these great questions. But it is. I agree. I think. Well, that's my podcast in a nutshell. I'm sure a lot of others. Yourself. You don't want that like over polished sort of fake bullshit. Like I'll be like, yeah, look, I'm struggling financially, or my mental health's fucked, or oh yeah, I had a sick weekend, the best weekend ever. I'm the king of the world. You just is honest and whatever rolls off the tongue. But I thought that was really cool about your podcast, because that was sort of the thing as I went through the guests, and I haven't listened to all of them, frankly, but just snippets of a few of them as well. But you can pick that up, like you're getting this out of them. And going back to what I was saying earlier about how the creatives of the world, like people expect so much from creatives, like we want to see this cool photography. We want this podcast every fucking Tuesday morning. It better be there, or, pump more albums out, more movies, all this sort of stuff. But we want to pay pretty much nothing for it. If we can pay nothing, that's like ideal, and it takes its toll on the person that's got to do that, because I mean, yeah, it's just a weird sort of world. So I think it's good that you can highlight that, especially from the musicians. There was when you mentioned Violent So a couple of times, I remember, was it James, when they won the Arias for, like, it might have been the album before, where they did like Covered in Chrome, that album, right?
Hungry Ghost, yeah.
Yeah, Hungry Ghost, yeah. And I think he said, I saw him in an interview and was like, yeah, I won the ARIA, and then the next day I applied a job at like McDonald's or something like that. And it was just like a real, while it was incredibly like humorous the way he said it, it was a real stark contrast of like, the guys just won this like, prestigious music award in Australia. They're killing it. They look awesome on stage. It's going well for them. Now he's fucking trying to work for McDonald's, so it's like, obviously there's something there that's not financially working, albeit being a fucking great band. But a lot of people wouldn't think like that, like obviously we do, because we love it, and we go that nth degree further. But yeah, I think what your podcast is doing is really cool to sort of highlight that, I guess, the warts and all, aspect of.
Because otherwise, like, these liars will come in and they won't be like Tidswell, and they'll say, oh yeah, we just won this award, everything's great for us. And it's like, but they do go to McDonald's, they just don't say that. So it's kind of like, it's nice to give some kind of insight to people that do go to McDonald's and think that they failed because they've gone to McDonald's to sustain their actual passion, whereas they should be proud of putting in so much work and still funneling a small wage towards a bigger dream. And that, like, you should never feel ashamed about that.
100%, man. And it's so, that old fucking thing I've seen, it's so cliche, but it's like the path to success or whatever, if you want to look at it like that. It's never just from like A to B. It's just fucking all over the shop, and you're hitting all sorts of things.
It's the worst.
Well, there's no blueprint for it, right? And even going back to the podcast, like, how do I make a fucking overlay? And again, being honest, and this is when you commented the other week about me being honest, but you're incredibly honest, and that's why we get along so well. When you're like, this is how I do X, and I'm like, so how do you do X? You kind of like, you need to seek that out. And that's kind of what you're getting from your podcast as well. You're giving like all these like insights into absolutely every point along the way, and I think that's really cool, because for my personality, like, I appreciate that. And I love seeing the whole, like, don't give me that over polished Hollywood stuff. Like, give me the realness, because that's the realness is going to make me feel better about my own situation. That's
exactly.
I don't know if that's morbid or not, but that's what I'm taking away from it. So fucking,
No, it's not morbid at all. Like, that's the thing, is that if people just owned it more.
Yeah.
And what I find with people that I meet is that they want to own it, but blogs and stuff, they don't go, hey, tell me about how hard you worked for this. They go, tell me why this album's different. Yeah. And you tell them that the album's different. But it's like, okay, tell me about a weird instrument that you really wanted to. Tell me about a song that you that sounds totally different. What's different about it now to what it was then? Like, it's the same question, but just phrased a bit differently, and it elicits a very different answer. Like, you've got no problem asking questions, you're an expert at it. But I think where a lot of places go wrong is they know what they've read the press release, and they go, okay, it's going to say this. How do I get to that? Yeah. And it's like, no, the press release already said that. Like, what else has it got? Yeah. I want like the biggest compliment anyone can give me is, oh, this was good. It's kind of like nothing like the press release. Yeah. Good. Yeah. It shouldn't be, it should be a real conversation.
Yeah. And I think that is the current times we're living in, which is good. I like that, because before the internet and stuff like that, where you couldn't get all these insights into musicians, for me, it always comes back to musicians, because they're the people that I love the most. I've always looked up to them, and they give you so much. But there's exactly what you want from the conversations. You're going, I want to hear your warts and all, and tell me that, like, you're like me in a way, and it makes you feel better about your situation. I watched like an hour interview with NoFX the other night. Again, just going down the fucking NoFX
Big
rabbit
no
hole.
effects.
Yeah, big fan. And it was like it was them doing the not a book reading, but like an interview about their book. And I didn't again, I'm gonna have to buy the book because I'm a super fan, you know.
Yeah.
But there was like they were talking about it so I could like so honestly on stage, you know, it was like, well, his girlfriend was, you know, fucking raped and he was molested and yeah, he's an alcoholic and he hates his father and it was all these fucking things. He nearly went to prison and I was like, and just the way they honestly talked, and I'm like, oh, now I just love that band even more because you're like, well, they've come from all these fucking really dark places, you know, like he's a drug addict, he's a heroin addict, like you're like, oh my god. Again, that's what like I feel like a lot of humanity is craving that. They want it, they want more, they want more. You know, I'll often it sounds fucked, but I'll often if I'm having a bad day, I'll often go and seek out some really like dark shit on the internet just to be like,
Yeah, man.
get a bit grateful about your own situation. It gives you that perspective, you know. But that's not to say that you shouldn't have a bad day because we all do, and it's okay. But yeah, it's just I don't know. It's an interesting world that we live in, man. But I fucking appreciate it. I think more than anything, how you're out there on the front line showcasing that. So
It
kudos to
takes
you,
me a
man.
bit longer to do episodes because I want to pick the right people, which is
Mm,
why I've got a monthly sort of thing.
yeah,
I do envy your format where you've got like a weekly thing because I'd love to do it more often. But it's just I don't want to pick the wrong person. And like I'm just very like my downfall in this whole process, what I need to get better at is stop over analyzing who's going to be on it
mm,
because I just worry that if too many people don't tell a true story, then it has no piece of authenticity, like the
yeah.
next two that I've got lined up, one's an OnlyFans girl, and then the next
Oh yeah,
one is an illustrator.
yeah.
And both have really amazing stories, but it takes time to craft the questions.
hundred
How am I
percent.
going to get there? And they go, ask me anything you want to ask. But then I've got to sit there and go, okay, well, do I want to ask this one? Because there's a little bit of fear in that. Like, do I ask something that may be confronting, but is an honest conversation starter?
Yeah.
And they did say you'd ask anything you want,
Yeah.
but it's hard. Like, I don't know if you get nervous when you ask people questions, but if it's an intrusive thing, even if the purpose of the podcast is that, it's
Yeah.
scary, and that's what takes me
100%.
so long to do episodes.
Yeah. No, and I think that's cool to be honest with that. I look for the most part. I mean, my show is more just like me wanting to talk about my life and not in an egotistical way. I literally think of it as like a therapy session each week. So I was saying to you before the potty, like I love having guests because it makes me come out of my shell and challenges me more. But those solo ones I crave because it's like therapy. I feel like I'm going a bit mental after like 2 or 3 weeks of not talking to myself in a fucking room, as bizarre as
Mm.
that sounds. But yeah, I do get nervous as well. Even though I love talking, you do get nervous. And I think the biggest thing I come back to is you don't want to make your guest look like a dickhead because of the questions that you've asked, and that's one thing I'm
Mhm.
super, super conscious of. So like for you, I know that you do all these great things and I don't really know you from a bar. So, but you're like, well, I need to highlight all these things that I think are great about him, like straight off the bat and kind of try to reinforce it as much as I can without being super weird about it. So it is a fine line and stuff like that. But you also do want to ask those questions that, again, you don't want to just be that cookie cutter shit. You're going, hey, like, what else can I sort of scrape out a bit more? And it can be as like basic as like Ken last week, right? I had a feeling that he was a Wild Hearts fan, which is another band I love. And I
Oh,
like,
he loved them. He mentioned them so many
yeah.
times.
And instead of me just being like, hey, like, do you love the Wild Hearts? I was just like, I sort of crafted a question that was like, he's either going to have to say, yeah, yes, I like them and go on with the story, or no, I fucking hate them. And I'm going to get my answer. But yeah, so there's things like that. It's funny that you mentioned that OnlyFans, right? Because I always joke about OnlyFans, starting an OnlyFans page as a way to like monetize the podcast, right? And I guess primarily it's sort of females in the industry, even though there's like, I'm sure there's a hell of a lot of males that, I not personally know, but I know a few, right? But it's such an interesting world, that whole thing, that whole concept to me. Yeah, I think that'd be really cool, man. I'd love to talk to someone that's like really involved in that world. Hey, I think that'd be a
Well,
sick
I
one.
did. I did, like, from a digital marketing perspective, I did some consulting for an OnlyFans person, a different OnlyFans person. And I realized how intricate and how complicated the world of OnlyFans is. You know, you've got to sell your money making is on OnlyFans. And somehow you've got to tell everyone that you're on OnlyFans without telling anyone that you're on OnlyFans.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing to do. And you end up with this web of all these different things pointing inwards. And if one of those little micro communities dies off, that's a portion of your income. Because how are they meant to find you again? You've got to then create that account again and then build up that following again. And so really there's all this spider web of all these different things holding this center point together. And if you lose everything because you don't follow the different changing rules of all these microsites, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Insta, you're screwed. You know, all your finances just disappear. And then on top of that, you've got to figure out, what does my audience want from me?
Yeah.
And that, like, and then you got to take your clothes off and be confident. Oh man, I couldn't do it. Like, there's so much that goes into that.
Yeah.
That again, a lot of people don't, appreciate. They just go like, take clothes off, I give money. And it's like, it just doesn't work like that,
No. And I think that, and it's cool to hear it from that marketing point of view. And it's interesting to think that, that you're getting that sort of clientele. And I guess, man, like, and it's not just, again, it's not about helping someone out that's on OnlyFans or that's in the music industry or whatever it is. It's all like that. When the marketing aspect comes into it, like we were just talking before the show, like, it's difficult. Like, you could probably talk to it way better than I can, which evidence of our conversation before the show, but it's such a fucking convoluted world out there. Like, I'll post something on TikTok and you're like, well, why hasn't it got that many views? Or I'll post something on Instagram. You're like, okay, like that didn't do as well as I thought it was going to do. Again, being super self-aware where you're going, fuck, like, all right, have I posted at the right time? Is the right guest? Are they sharing it? Is this, is that? Or you'll fucking post a photo of your daughter and you get like 1,000 likes and you're like, do they love my family and do they hate the podcast? Like, because I'm just that guy that goes, hey, I'm like super nice going, yeah, I like that. Are you taking the time to put it on here? Good effort. You know what I mean? And sometimes I scroll past and go, you did it. I feel bad. He'll give you a double tap. But yeah, there's obviously people out there going, nah, dude, we love his daughter and we hate the podcast. So
I think what people like though is they like a change. And, their feed sometimes can be sell. If you put yourself and you like sort of sell, there's like this magic rule in social media where it's 50% like selling what you're there to do. And then it's 25% things about, you, or about the thing that you're selling, but aren't the thing that you're selling. So it might be the podcasting world. So you might go, hey, I listened to this podcast. It's sick. Thought you guys might want to know. It's about podcasting or it's about, music or something. And then the other 25% is things that have nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
That are just like, hey, I'm just one of the people. Yeah. And that like 50, 25, 25 is the big breakdown in, how do you sort of balance and how do you maintain interest in a subscriber base? And so if you hit any of those segments at the right time, the likes will go up, right? You got to think about, okay, Sunday, is anyone really on their phones? If they are, they're kind of just scrolling. They want recipes. They want shit like that. They don't have time to sit down. Monday, everyone's pissed off because it's Monday. Tuesday, that's when like I hit good content. So generally I only really post anything meaningful Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday, everyone's out. Saturday, everyone's out. Sunday morning, everyone's hungover. And so really you only have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to go, okay, these are my money making days. Everything else can kind of be, something fun or something like that. But who am I telling? Like I took a bit of a break when COVID happens to sort of reassess what I wanted to do as a forced break, but it was a break that I needed. And I didn't spend much time on my own personal social media. If you stop posting, Instagram will penalize you. And so, trying to get an account back from, a really active one where you get 1,000 likes per photo to, something that's again 1,000 likes. It just doesn't happen because there's been this dormant period in between. And so you've got to really put some shit hot content there that gets heaps of likes. The best way to get shit hot content is to put a meme out there. And so you look at my page now, and that top half, there's memes. There's like pictures of people like, salsa in a shoe. There's like a birthday cake floating in an ocean. Pair that with like a true anecdote about your mental health, and people connect with that. They go like, okay, that's brave. But they stop scrolling because they saw a cake in the ocean. And then you give them something meaty, and it has to be real. Otherwise, like, what are you doing? You're not really serving anything. But I just documented, if you look at any of those really stupid posts, they're actually got a really serious story attached to it, which, I use that as a bit of a diary to help, rebuild my account until I was ready to start doing music photography again. And I can get back out there, and then, stuff's still relevant. But you got to find a way to keep it hot. Otherwise it dies off, and, your reach goes to shit.
Yeah, that's, I appreciate you sharing that, man. Cause the whole world of, my partner's like, oh, you should put more content out there. And I'm like, I'm one of those guys that like the phone is good for certain things, but it's annoying 99% of the time in my eyes. But doing the podcast and stuff and getting in people's faces, you kind of like, you've got to be on the go all the time, and the algorithms and stuff. So it is a fucking whole interesting world, that whole thing. And it's not just a case of, I'm going to post a cool photo here or a story or whatever it is. And if I post it, they will come, they'll listen to the podcast. Everyone listens to the podcast, the 3,000 or 4,000 followers I got, they'll all listen.
Yeah.
It's never
all
that case.
Timing. And it's interesting because like you put something up, I don't know about you, but you put something up, and then 3 episodes later they go like, you should get someone from Violent Soho on it. And I'm like, no, you clearly don't listen.
That's
and
it.
like, and it's hard. And then you go like, okay, so did I not promote it enough? Or did I choose the wrong times? And you can easily just sit there and go like, you don't listen to it, so screw you. Or you can go, okay, when did I post back then? Was I doing the right thing? Like the things that you talk about, was the guest posting it? Was I giving the guest an easy to share piece of content? Was I picking the best parts from that? Those are the things that make a difference. And then you make those changes differently. But I mean, we spoke about decay rate and stuff, and I'm a big fan of affinity scores and decay rate, which are the 2 biggest factors with any algorithm. So like an affinity score is kind of like, your affinity score will be very, very strong right now because we've been texting back and forth. So if I post something, you're seeing it. Like there's no way, because our like relationship in Instagram's way is going straight to the top. And then someone else's affinity score is less and less. So it's kind of like points, right? 1 like, 1 point, a comment, maybe 2 points. So the more we do that back and forward, the more Instagram goes, hell yeah, he loves Matt. I'm going to show him Matt's stuff.
Dude. I just keep seeing your shit. So every story, I'm like, fuck, this guy's got a lot of stories.
And then the next person, like stuff like that, But like the stories also, I sit on a bunch of different stuff that I could share. But you want to space it out during the day as well, because it bounces your head back up to the top. So if your affinity score is weak, and then I get pushed back to say position 5 and the person watches the first 4, then they're not seeing my stuff. But what about the one time where they do have a bit more time and they get to position 7? If I'm in position 5, they'll see it. But I've got to keep posting one story every couple of hours to stay in that position 5. Otherwise, I'm going further and further back. So every time I add, it goes up. It goes back up, back up. And then if you if you think about it, okay, if I posted, say, 10 stories that day, if they get to my story, they'll view all 10. So it only just matters that they open the story one time. So that's why, like, you see a lot of stories that are back to back. I didn't sit there and post 10 back to back. I post them across the day to keep that position fresh.
Wow. Okay. It's funny now that you're saying this shit and like articulating it. I'm like, it all makes like complete sense. Wow. Because we've been talking a lot, and I've been seeing your fucking story, like the first one every time. And I just thought, it's because he's new. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, that's a factor as well.
you know,
That
but
is a factor as well.
wow.
But another thing that I need to start doing, and I recommend you do it as well, is after every podcast or when you put out a podcast, go live and just talk about it for like 15 minutes. Doesn't matter if one or two people pop in or out. Every
Yeah.
time they pop in, that's like improving the affinity score between the two of you.
Yeah.
And
Right.
there's
Okay.
only one place where a live video goes, and it's straight to the top after all the stories. And so
Yeah.
if you go live, that's the only place that you're going.
Yeah.
And so,
That's interesting.
do that.
Yeah. 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 You're the first person that said that. I had one live once and I had like a fucking panic attack on it, to be honest, man. I actually had a whole full on snafu. I was trying to do like a cooking thing in the first lockdown and it was like a bit of fun, you know? And then I was like trying to read the questions while I'm trying to not chop my fucking fingers off. And then I paused it thinking that it paused the video. It just pauses the video, not the audio. And I'm like having a full on panic attack. And my partner's like, you're the king, you got it, and all this stuff. And then like people after the fact were like, hey bro, like, are you all right? Just heard you on Instagram live. Sound like you're having a bit of meltdown. I was like, oh yeah, no, it was just like a total like, it was just a stitch up. Like that was like, I'd planned that, you know, like I was like, no, I was literally having a panic attack. Like what a fucking idiot, you know? But yeah, that's interesting. I've never thought about that, but mate, this is
Just
why I
even
see.
if you got like a 10-minute thing, like, hey, we just had this podcast with Ken from the Bronx. I really enjoyed it. He was a really nice guy. I learned this.
Mm,
I learned about Mariachi Old Bronx and how, like, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't
yeah,
matter. Just rehash the whole thing
yeah, no,
because
that's
it gets you to the top. And then you go, if you're keen on listening to it in detail, here's where you get it, blah, blah, blah. You're off.
yeah, fuck yeah, I like that, man. I might have to do that and suss that
I've
out.
never bothered doing it, but
Nah,
that's something I need to that's something I need to do too. And then finally, the decay rate is the other big thing. So I will never post anything on Instagram if I'm not free for the next hour to talk back to every single person that engages with it.
yeah,
If you can't just post and then put your phone down,
yeah,
because the decay rate is kind of like this decaying thing, and the way to stop the decay, which is the decay in the reach. So
hmm,
when you first post it, you'll have like total potency, and then it goes all the way down to like just not being served anymore into people's feeds. So to eliminate like a rapid decay, you want to reply back. So if someone goes, hey, sick photo or sick app, yeah, sweet, thanks so much, man. Which part was your favorite bit?
yeah, yeah,
And then that counts as like, oh, you got him straight away. And Instagram goes, oh, sweet, he's active. Okay, let's keep it going until it
yeah,
deems you're not there anymore.
yeah.
So if you don't reply to people straight away, Instagram goes, he's not actually there. Fuck it.
Mm. Yeah, fuck, that's interesting because I would say I'm 50-50 on that, you know, in terms of like, because I work full-time job and stuff, like usually we'll do the potty on a Monday, post on the Tuesday, well, I post the guest like a picture, you know, and do a post that way. Normally it's just a story share if I'm just on my own because everything's run off my personal page at this point. But yeah,
Mm.
it is interesting because sometimes I have to put the phone down because I'm distracted and then you find yourself you're not getting back to it. So I'll just bank it all up and then go, yeah, bang, 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 bang. But
Yeah.
now learning that, yeah, I'll probably hit it a bit different, I reckon. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's cool, man. The whole Matt simplified thing. When we were talking a couple of weeks ago, you were talking about. I don't know if you can talk to it at this point or not, but you really helped me a lot. One with my overlay, which is like huge shout out. I was stoked that you helped me on one. I was like, it was like the kindness of strangers kind of thing. I was just like, why is this guy helping me? Is he trying to catfish me? But then I was like, oh, he's actually
And
really
you were
helped me.
like, oh, can I pay you? And I'm like,
Yeah, I was
nah,
like, dude,
man, it's
you've
fine.
just,
Don't worry about it.
yeah. So I was really stoked. So I'll buy you a beer at some point for sure. But it was that
That
kind
was
of
my
thing. You
pleasure.
kept telling me things and being like, hey, look, and I'd ask you something, and I'm kind of going, I'm gonna ask it until I'm like just about to overstep my boundaries here because I'm like, he obviously knows some shit. But then you got talking about like the little marketing style courses that you want to do, sort of showing all these people how to simplify things. Because to me, you put it in a way that you simplified it, if that is cliche as that sounds. But
Mm.
I was like, oh, you've really helped me on X, Y, and Z. And I was like really super appreciative, you know. So, but you got talking about how you kind of want to do that a bit more full time and sort of put it out there a bit more for a wider audience. So I don't know if you're going to talk to that at all
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like fully ready yet, but I think you summarize it pretty well. Like I just felt like every time I wanted to learn how something is, curiosity is how I figured out how to do
Mm.
it. But you have to trawl through so much stuff online. And then if it's a 3-part guide, maybe you'll read part 1 here and then you'll read part 2 is written by someone else on a different website and it's
Yeah.
not speaking the same language.
Mm.
Whereas if we look at it and we go, okay, here's a consistent sort of, guide that's just no nonsense, no frill, anything like that. Here's how you do it. Here's a template. If you want to read how to do it and do it yourself, here it is for free. If you want to just get the template, just buy a coffee or whatever, and work on it that way. So that's kind of like what I'm building, and that'll be across podcasting, digital marketing, and photography. I've already got a shitload of photography stuff done. Digital marketing stuff's coming along, but SEO is a really hard thing to teach, because it's a really important thing, but it's a hard thing to teach. And then podcasting as well is a pretty no-brainer, I think, as well, because a lot of people just put a mic in the middle of a room and they'll just go, oh yeah, let's all sit around it and talk. And it's like, it's not that easy, like, yeah, that'll work, but you won't get listeners, right? Because it sounds like dog shit.
Yeah.
And then they go,
I know, mate. Yeah, we've made a few mistakes along the way. Don't worry about that.
and the person at the cafe, I actually got the idea because the person at the cafe calls me podcast, because she goes, oh, how do I get my podcast on Spotify? I'm like, oh, it's easy, you just do this.
Yeah.
And she was like, really? Like, and I'm just like, yeah, it's just that easy. And it's surprising how much information you can give in such a small amount of time,
It's super important too. I think, like, I'm big on paying it forward, which you are as well, because you help me out and obviously help a lot of people out. But it's about that too. Like, if you can see someone that's struggling, or they ask you a question, again, when you helped me that week, a couple of weeks ago with the overlay, and which was super fucking. Well, I was so stoked.
Love this overlay.
Man, I love it, man. I literally, my partner walked in the room. She's like, "Did you create that?" I was like, "Well, not all the way created." I was like 90%. And she was like, "Oh my God, I'm so proud of you. Like, you're doing all this stuff." I'm like, "Yeah, look, I'm a graphic designer, okay? Like, all right, I've got a program, it's free." No, but literally I was like, and it was cool how it all came together. But again, one of the guys I work with, he does a podcast, and he sort of hit me up, for a couple of tips. And you're like, well, I'm not going to help you. You know what I mean? Like, that would be a real dickhead move to just be like, I know the answers. Well, I know some of the answers to the questions that you're asking me, so I'm going to let you know. Like, I'm not worried about, oh, he's going to steal my audience or anything. You can't think like that. Like, it's never like, oh, what if they get better at it? I mean, so what? If they do, I'm still going to probably fucking do what I do anyway. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think audiences are that fickle anyway. I don't think
I don't think so.
Audiences of any genre, people have time for something different. And if you have something different, like, why wouldn't they listen to you? It's different.
Yeah, exactly, man. I think that, 100%. That's it. You just got to do what you're doing, and then if people like it, they'll lap it up. But that's really cool, man. I said before the show, I was sussing out a YouTube channel, which I'd recommend going to check out, because you got some really. I was on there for like 5 minutes a day when I was meant to be working, but even just your intro video, bro, got me. The intro video got me. I was like, oh God, this guy.
Did I have a shaved head in that? Did I have like a really
definitely short? Shorter hair. Yeah. Or it was a bit spiky actually. You're looking a bit more. I see you looking a bit more corporate tonight, if I can be honest with you. I don't know. Very svelte tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
He's got the black on black thing.
Well, this is the same setup for my my Zoom meetings and stuff like that. My Teams meetings.
Yeah, it's a good setup. I'm super. I really want to get I've got a dodgy looking King of the Couch thing that my dad did. It was a bit of a.
That's
he
sick.
Loves it. It's a bit of a stencil thing. It's a bit of a. I always think it looks funny because it looks like me, but it's quite. It's a bit funny, and there's no pink. It's maroon, but we're taking it. But I want to get a big sort of fucking backdrop that sort of goes a bit wider, because I feel like my head's on the head, But interior designing, that's something else we'll have a master.
Well, there's nothing going on over here. Like, what's going on over here? Nothing.
Oh, man. And that's it too. We were talking about it before, like being over polished. Like, you can fucking decorate and do this to the cows come home, but if your podcast, like what you're talking about, is shit, then no one's gonna listen anyway. They're not gonna fuck about. What record is that in the background? I'm actually intrigued though. What's that one you got on display up there in the background? I feel like
this one is Manchester Orchestra.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool. I felt like I'd seen that front cover
Why is it
before.
so hard to point?
It's very hard to do that. Just like go and listen
yeah.
to.
Yeah, that's always my what's playing is up there. My prized possession is a signed Kendrick Lamar LP, or my
By Kendrick
first press
himself, obviously.
Yeah.
Have you seen met him? Or you've photographed him? Or
I just signed it. I just wrote Matt on the front. No, I was like one of the first people that ordered. Like the first sort of 100 people, I think, got a signed copy. Of Damn.
Right. Yeah.
And so I was just one of the lucky people. I did photograph Kendrick. It's Kendrick.
Oh, right. I couldn't tell who it was, man. Sort of in the dark there.
A little dark there. Yeah. So yeah, that was cool. And my other prized possession is a sealed Hungry Ghost original pressing of 500.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
So I got that boy when someone was moving, and they're like, if someone needs it, it should probably be you. And I was like, yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, shit, yeah, man. It looks like you got a decent little collection there. I've got my one Goodfellas soundtrack. Don't even have a record player, but it's the thing I like about vinyl is it looks like art beyond what's like on the actual record itself. Like it just looks like a piece of art to me, so I love them. But
dude, that's a good movie.
It's so good, man. It's so good. I was watching Henry Hill. I was listening to a Henry Hill thing on Howard Stern from like 2002 today on YouTube. Someone sent it to me. Fuck, it was out there. It was cool. It was
dude.
good.
All those movies are so good.
Yeah, I love the gangster things. Again, much like a lot of things, it's the fact that it's so far like reserved from like your current life. You're like, I'll never join the mafia. So I'm so intrigued by the mafia. But yeah, man, I think this has been really cool. I feel like we could keep talking and talking and talking. We might have to do a part 2 and a whole fucking series. Who knows? But I haven't timed it. Don't know how long we've been talking for. It feels like we've been talking for a little while, but doesn't matter. We keep talking. But might wrap it up, I reckon.
Of course.
We've covered a lot of ground, mate. But where can people find you online if they want to check you out? Whatever you do, where can they go and get all your stuff?
Pretty much Matt Simplified across the board. So you can go to mattwalterphoto.com for my photo stuff. You can go to Matt Simplified on Instagram, Matt Simplified on YouTube. mattsimplified.com if you want a little preview of the things that I'm working on. Otherwise Twitter, I'm on there a little bit. Just find me wherever. I'm never really anywhere, but I'm everywhere.
Mate, you're everywhere. He knows the affinity rate. He knows how it works, people. He'll fucking be number 1 on the stories. Nah, cool.
I'm wherever I need to be just long enough to get whatever I need to be.
I can guarantee I open up Instagram right now. I'll fucking see him. I'll see the DP. Man, I appreciate your time. Hey, I learned a lot in that podcast. It was super fun. But yeah, I'd love to chat again. And I'm sure we definitely will be chatting again on the interwebs, man, you and I. So
absolutely. I love your podcast, man. You do such a good job. Like, you're such a good host. I think you've got a great voice, and you have a good way of connecting with people. It's really cool, man. So thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that, man. I really appreciate that. Thanks so much. That's King of the Couch, episode 131 with Matty Oxlade, aka Matt Simplified. Thanks so much for being on the show, mate. We'll see you again soon. But hope you all have a great week, and we love you all. No matter who you are, or what you're going